Greetings, friends of the Grummels. Welcome to Shinies and Luckydos. My name is Shirviu, and I'm here with Vaski, and today we'll be speculating on the Dark Prophet Zul, a prominent lore figure in the Battle for Azeroth expansion. We'll first explain what we know about him so far from Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria, and then we'll get into our core questions about his role in the Battle for Azeroth storyline.
Alright guys, so could Zul be the prophet of Hakkar the Soulflayer? And what could that mean for us in relation to Gahun? Keep in mind though, there are going to be some spoilers in this video, so watch at your own risk. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright guys, so we're going to jump right into this lore. Who exactly is the Dark Prophet Zul? And how did he become such a major story character? Well, Zul is first and foremost known for his incredible power of sight. Though all dark prophets are capable of witnessing great tragedies before they come to pass, Zul was unique that even as a child, his dark and terrible visions came true down to the last horrifying detail. He quickly rose to become one of the most respected elders of the Zanchuli Council of Zandalar and the primary advisor to King Rastakhan. This potentially makes Zul the most powerful troll in the world, and definitely one of the oldest. Things started to get a little dicey though, when Zul sees a vision of the Cataclysm brought on by Deathwing. He urges King Rastakhan to evacuate the trolls and leave their ancient homeland of Zandalar before it's swallowed by the sea. King Rastakhan stays firm and refuses to believe Zul's prediction will come to pass. Instead, he sees this as a political move on Zul's part to sow unrest. And to silence him, King Rastakhan provisions Zul and his followers with ships to evacuate, while any trolls who doubt the prophet stay behind on Zandalar with King Rastakhan. It's at this point in the story when the player is first introduced to Zul, whose initial appearance in game was in Cataclysm's Rise of the Zandalari patch, which introduced the remakes of Zul'Gurub and Zul'Aman. The cinematic shows a meeting of various troll tribes on Yojamba Isle in Stranglethorn Vale. Generally, this meeting occurs in Zandalar's capital of Zuldazar every 6 years. But this time around, Zul has personally visited each of the various troll tribes to warn them of the impending cataclysm which will doom Zandalar, and for this reason, the trolls agree to meet him in Stranglethorn instead. Zul speaks to 3 trolls in particular at this meeting: Dakara, the leader of the Amani, Jindo, the leader of the Gurabashi, and Vol'jin, the leader of the Darkspears. First, he promises Dakara of the Amani untold power with which they can avenge Zul'jin and Zul'Aman. Next, he convinces Jindo of the Gurabashi to venture back into Zul'Gurub after their defeat in Classic. When Zul finally asks Vol'jin if he and his Darkspears are on board, Vol'jin answers no and leaves the meeting before its conclusion. To end the meeting, Zul casts an image of Hakkar above the bonfire. Now, it is unclear what Zul offers the Firaki or the Drakari at this meeting, but Mists of Pandaria makes it very clear that they have allied with him as well. Perhaps they were offered nothing, just like the Darkspear due to their small numbers. Though the trolls' attempts at Zul'Gurub and Zul'Aman are thwarted by the players in Cataclysm, Zul does not lose the favor of these tribes. In Mists of Pandaria, Zul's Zandalari followers set out for the Isle of Thunder with the Amani, Gurabashi, Firaki, and Drakari in tow. With the mists clear, Zul is finally able to renew the Zandalari's old allegiances with the Mogu. Although we do not see Zul at all throughout the expansion, his Mogu and troll soldiers constantly mention they are following his orders. It is Zul who is behind the resurrection of the Thunder King Lei Shen by Prophet Karzul, and it is Zul who starts the war on Zushin province in northern Pandaria, which most of the Shadowpan died defending at the Peak of Serenity. It is important to note that all of Zul's actions on Pandaria are in accordance with old pacts made in the days before the Great Sundering. Back when the continent of Kalimdor was whole, back before the Pandaren had broken free of their slavery. The Zandalari were deeply allied with the Mogu, thus sharing their knowledge of voodoo and of the Loa. Then, the Mogu shared their powers of flesh shaping, titan forging, and spirit binding. In tandem, they conducted many vile experiments on the Titan Keeper Ra-Den, including creating the Sorok race using dark animus. They also caused the re-origination of Uldum, devised a method of reversing the curse of flesh, and artificially extended the lifespan of then members of the Zan-Chuli Council. In the end, Lei Shen trusted the Zandalari more than his own successors, and with his dying words, imparted the knowledge of how to resurrect him onto one council member in particular, and they went by the name Zulathra. So how did Zul know about these ancient pacts? Could he have been a member of the council of old? Perhaps he was one of the members who had their life extended. Or did he find out through other means? Much yet is unclear, but hopefully that will be explained in Battle for Azeroth. After the conclusion of Mists of Pandaria, we don't hear of Zul at all, until, of course, in BFA. Which brings us to our main theory. Could Zul be the prophet of Hakkar the Soulflayer? And what could that mean for us in the upcoming expansion in relation to G'huun?
Thanks, Vaski. Okay, so let's get into the theory. We're thinking Zul could be the prophet of the blood god Hakkar the Soulflayer, which would explain his relation to G'huun. As we mentioned earlier, Zul has been plagued with nightmarish visions. It's very unusual that the visions have been present for his whole life, because a troll's spiritual power usually begins to awaken when he or she ascends into adulthood and undergoes some form of trials. Could it be that when Zul was but a child, he was chosen by Hakkar to be his prophet? If Hakkar is responsible for marking Zul with his sight, that could explain the nightmarish visions. It would be a rare occurrence, but the World of Warcraft RPG manual does mention that Loa can pick their prophets at birth and mark them. There's also a great example in-game which links Hakkar to nightmarish visions in the sunken temple of a Tal Hakkar dungeon in the Swamp of Sorrows. Chronicle Volume 1 tells us that dark magics twisted the flora and fauna surrounding the temple, which drew the attention of the green dragon aspect Ysera. Upon discovering that the trolls were trying to resurrect Hakkar, she sank the temple and charged a group of green dragons to watch over it. When players enter the dungeon, we meet Lord Aetherius, who tells us that his brother Aranicus, consort of the green dragon aspect Ysera, has been corrupted by the Emerald Nightmare. Aranicus had come to the temple to watch over the sunken ruins and prevent the Etalai trolls from summoning Hakkar into the world ever again. However, the collapsed temple trapped not only the trolls, but also the dragons inside. This allowed the trolls to corrupt Aranicus and the other now trapped green dragons by injecting them with Hakkar's blood, thus furthering the trolls' plans of bringing Hakkar into the world. When infused with Hakkar's blood, Aranicus and the other green drakes then suffered horrendous visions of pure nightmare and despair, similar in nature to Zul's visions. So now we know that contact with Hakkar or his blood causes nightmarish visions. What other things link Zul and Hakkar together? Let's next look at the previously mentioned Rise of the Zandalari cinematic, which we have a link to in the description box below. As mentioned earlier, this cinematic shows a meeting between various troll tribes. During this meeting, Zul promises Jindo of the Gurubashi that with his help they can return Zul'Gurub to its former glory. It concludes with Zul casting an image of Hakkar over the camp bonfire, stating, "Against the powers we unleash, none shall stand for long." Normally, anything to do with Hakkar would be outright rejected by the Zandalari, so it's strange to see that Zul could be working with Hakkar in some manner. It's because of this we instantly wondered why Zul would be doing that, and how the two of them could be further linked. The first thing to note about the cinematic Rise of the Zandalari is the location of the meeting place. Yojamba Isle is close to Zul'Gurub, and was the Zandalari tribe's quest hub back in Classic. Players would pick up quests from Molthor, the Hand of Rastakhan, and various other Zandalari trolls to aid them in stopping the resurrection of Hakkar. It's during these quests we learn that the Zandalari are responsible for banishing Hakkar the Soulflayer after the Gurubashi Civil War many years ago, way before the Raid in Classic. As the story goes, the Gurubashi were going through hard times and were contacted by the malevolent spirit Hakkar. Through his worship, they were saved from the famine and drought that would have otherwise been their demise. At first, the Zandalari were happy that the Gurubashi appeared to be returning to their old ways of Loa worship and conquering. But before long, Hakkar became more and more thirsty, more and more demanding, until finally enough was enough. The Zandalari realized that no matter how many sacrifices, how much blood, Hakkar would never be satisfied. They united the other troll tribes and led the fight against Hakkar and his Atalai priests in Zul'Gurub. At the time, they likely thought they had rid the world of Hakkar for good, but as we all know, there have been many attempts to resurrect him since. Knowing this, we thought it was strange that Zul would encourage the Gurubashi to return to Zul'Gurub to perform another ritual involving Hakkar. After all, Zul is a member of the Zanchuli Council of Zandalar, the very same advisors who would have turned against Hakkar all those years ago. We don't know much about the ritual Jindo performs in Cataclysm Zul'Gurub remake, but it is reminiscent of what the Amani did to the Loa in Zul'Aman during Burning Crusade and Cataclysm. It also appears the Drakari and their Loa underwent a similar ritual in Zul'Drak during Wrath of the Lich King. This is where things start to get fishy. In Battle for Azeroth, it's revealed that Zul was present with the Zandalari forces in Zul'Drak for the war against the Lich King, and would have witnessed them sacrificing their Loa for power. It's also worth noting that Rastakhan mentions that it's been years since the subjugation of any Loa, which last occurred back in Zul'Drak. This illustrates a common thread we'll be seeing, that Zul has been acting on his own since leaving Zandalar, and Rastakhan in fact knows little of what transpired across the world. He may not even know about the rituals Zul and Jindo were responsible for in Cataclysm. Which begs the question, was Zul actually responsible for the twisted practices of Loa subjugation back in Zul'Drak and Zul'Aman, or did he simply learn of it from the other tribes? It's difficult to say as not much about Zul has been explained to players so far. But we have to consider that Zandalari ambassadors were being sent out to offer aid with regard to Loa militarization even as far back as the famous troll wars between the Amani trolls, the High Elves, and the humans. Could Zul have been a member of the council as far back as that? It is clear that he teaches Jindo what to do in the Zul'Gurub remake at the very least, but to what end? Why would Zul want Hakkar to be bound if not for subjugation and militarization? In the dungeon encounter itself, it seems that Hakkar is actually going along with the ritual up until a crucial point where Jindo turns the tables on him. When the fight starts, we hear Jindo shout, "Meddlesome insects, now you will feel my wrath." We believe that this is Hakkar speaking through Jindo, and Hakkar is mad that we are interrupting his escape. We believe that Zul, Jindo, and Hakkar were working together to use Jindo's body as a vessel to transport Hakkar outside of Zul'Gurub. It was stated back in the quest text from the original raid that Zul'Gurub is the only place where Hakkar can be brought back into the physical world from the void. Perhaps because Hakkar is bound directly to Zul'Gurub, binding him to Jindo would have given him a means to exit the temple. It's when we attack though that Jindo gets greedy, or perhaps he planned to betray Zul and Hakkar all along. Ain't no one gonna stop Jindo. It's only when Jindo brings us into the spirit realm, however, that Hakkar begins to protest. Your deceit is unforgivable, Jindo. You spit in the face of a god. You overstep your bounds, Jindo. You toy with powers that are beyond you. Have you forgotten who I am? Have you forgotten what I can do? Hakkar proceeds to destroy Jindo, but does not kill us. In the end, perhaps we saved Hakkar from his subjugation at the hands of Jindo. At any rate, he no longer wants us to feel his wrath, and instead says, "Be freed, insects, I will deal with you another time."
By this line of reasoning, Zul was not in fact working against Hakkar, but with him, before finally being betrayed by the likes of Jindo the Godbreaker. After his failure in Zul'Gurub, Zul's next conquest was for the Throne of Thunder, which contained a very important flesh-shaping facility. He made sure to bring along some of the Zandalari officials who dealt with Hakkar back in Classic, and so Molthor, Marlee, and Jinrock accompanied him into Lei Shen's palace. Zul also brings the eternal spirit of Tharanja along to the Isle of Thunder, whom you may remember from Drak-Theron Keep. In this dungeon, Prophet Tharanja takes the form of a skeletal wind serpent similar to the avatar of Hakkar found in the Sunken Temple. Tharanja pulls you into a pocket of the Shadowlands or Spirit Realm during the encounter, similar to the encounter with Hakkar. His main generals likely have experience with Hakkar because his end goal is Hakkar related, even after his defeat in Zul'Gurub. This could explain why Zul went to Zuldrak during the Scourge attack in the first place. Although it was perhaps under the pretense of helping them versus the Scourge, his intentions may have been simply to save Hakkar's fellow Wind Serpent allies. Maybe Zul saved Tharanja's spirit, which would explain why we see him on the Isle of Thunder. It seems he was too late to rescue the Wind Serpent Quetzalin, though, who truly perished in Zuldrak. As of now, she's made her very own pocket dimension where her shade will continue to torture the spirits of her betraying followers for eternity. Now, why would Zul want to ally himself with Lei Shen, though, in the first place? To start, the Zandalari would not only have a share in the power of Lei Shen the Thunder King, but also it would hearken their return to older, more bloodthirsty and primitive ways, which would benefit both Zul and Hakkar. Most importantly, though, it would grant Zul access to the flesh-shaping anima resources of the Throne of Thunder, as well as any secrets held in the engine of Nelak Shah. This information would undoubtedly help him understand the workings of Uldir, where the blood god Gahun is located, which seems to be his ultimate goal in BFA. To further illustrate this, let's break away for a moment to explain Zul's betrayal of King Rastakhan and his involvement with Queen Azshara in battle for Azeroth. As we've learned from the quest chains in Zuldazar, the majority of the modern-day Zanchuli Council is corrupt. With the help of Yasma, the conduit of Shadra, Zul manipulates the Zanchuli Council to stage a coup against Rastakhan. This is all thrust into action as you, the hero, are tasked by Zul himself to dispose of his disciple gone rogue, Vol'jamba, who may have known something of Zul's scheme. As you progress, Vol'jamba tries to reason with you and tell you the truth he has found, only to give up after deciding you, the player, have been blinded by Zul's sway. After disposing of Vol'jamba, you're led to the coast where you're able to loot some damning letters off the Naga in the area. The first letter, Report from Zuldazar, directly connects the corruption of the Zanchuli Council with Queen Azshara. We believe this letter is written by Yasma on behalf of her and Zul, and that she discloses here that her ultimate goal is to rule over a new world order with Azshara after Nazjatar has risen from the sea. The second letter, A Royal Concern, is the response from Queen Azshara herself. This letter suggests that Yasma indicated to Azshara that powerful relics could be found in Graal's temple, and that Yasma and Zul are ultimately the reason the Naga attacked Graal and shattered his shrine. Although Azshara's forces only managed to recover a few of the relics they were seeking, they've not given up. The letter goes on to indicate that a new force has been sent back to the temple, which is now underwater, to do a second search under new guidance. We believe this guidance is from either Zul or Hakkar himself, who has assured Azshara that powerful relics are indeed in there somewhere. The letter ends with Azshara dismissing the Tortollan threat, stating they're not onto her plans. Ironically, the player goes on to take a quest from a Tortollan to hide the temple's relics so that the Naga cannot claim them, showing Zul and Azshara's sheer arrogance. Although Azshara clearly trusts Zul's power of sight, we believe Zul does use his knowledge to manipulate and control others, only divulging the truth where it's convenient to elevate himself. This would make Zul a type of false prophet. Many of the journals which can be looted off the trolls on the Isle of Thunder illustrate this. As it turns out, Zul's followers on Pandaria were led to believe Zandalar had been destroyed by the sea and that they had nowhere else to go. Until now, we had no idea just how much of an exaggeration this was, but it seems Zul had been lying to them all along. In addition, Zul was likely fully aware of the other trolls' dark practices of Loa subjugation, and at the very least did not oppose it. Zul went as far as to encourage these practices in Cataclysm, and does so again in Battle for Azeroth. We see this with his attempted subjugation of Razan, the Loa of Kings. Upon returning to the city of Zuldazar to tell King Rastakhan of Zul's deeds, we find him gravely wounded by Zul in an attempt at the throne. We ultimately go on to see the death of his Loa Razan at the hands of Zul. With the magic of the blood trolls, Zul uses Razan's blood to channel power for the resurrection of the first king of the Zandalari Empire, King Dazar. This leaves Rastakhan broken and desperate after barely surviving the encounter himself. Rastakhan clings to life on a promise to kill Zul and avenge Razan before resigning himself to Bwonsamdi. We believe Zul is likely the one responsible for the blood troll threat, having taught them their blood magic. For Zul to channel power from such a powerful Loa, and to then go on to resurrect Dazar, Zul would have to be very well versed in this art. Seeing as most blood magic used had been wiped out amongst the trolls after Hakkar's initial defeat, it's most logical to assume that if Zul is in fact the prophet of Hakkar, this would mean the Loa himself probably taught Zul what he knows. This wouldn't be the first time, after all, that other Loa have been killed for the benefit of Hakkar, and Hakkar has imparted prophets with powerful knowledge before. In fact, Hakkar spoke to Gemalan the prophet through a dream, and taught him how to bring Hakkar back using the power of the green dragonflight. It's for this reason that they were lured to the sunken temple of Atal Hakkar in the first place. In addition, Zul clearly admired the dark flesh shaping of the Mogu, and is not afraid to resurrect long-dead emperors such as Lei Shen and use them as puppets for his schemes. In the Throne of Thunder raid, we learn that the Mogu had themselves been experimenting with the blood magic of the Dark Anima. Further to this, in the quest The Full Prophecy, we come across a series of 3 different scrolls called the Word of Zul, which further incriminate the Dark Prophet. From this we learn that Zul used an ancient and forbidden ritual to resurrect Lei Shen, and in doing so, mastered the means of returning a king to life and controlling them. This reveals 2 major pieces of information. For one, Zul had been controlling Lei Shen all along, so all of the blood magic being conducted within the Throne of Thunder during Mists of Pandaria, including what was done to the High Keeper Ra-Den, was done at the hands of Zul. By this logic, we can determine that Zul was definitely not acting on behalf of his people. Uniting an army to wage war on the Pandaren was instead all part of a larger plan ripe with deceit and betrayal. Secondly, we learn that an ancient and forbidden ritual was used. This is significant because the only troll customs which were forbidden were related to blood magic and, of course, to Hakkar. Even if G'huun was sitting in Uldir way back during Cataclysm when Zul began to carry out his plot, it's unlikely that the ancient and forbidden magic employed was a result of this entity, whom we have no prior knowledge of existing in ancient times, or interacting previously with the trolls. The one and only blood god in troll history has always been Hakkar, and for that reason, this is very strong proof that Zul used a Hakkari ritual to bring back Emperor Lei Shen and ultimately King Dazar. We believe the manipulation of the throne is instrumental in accomplishing Zul's goal of uniting the troll empire under one banner. Dazar would be a powerful political figurehead and the perfect pawn to supplant a return to the use of blood magic in Greater Troll society to the direct benefit of Hakkar. Being the Loa of blood, we believe the use of blood magic directly empowers Hakkar and could possibly restore his physical manifestation. Hakkar would then have the ability to finally usurp the pantheon of Loa worship who had forsaken him so long ago. Thankfully, the player is able to foil Zul's plans by taking Dazar out in the Atal Dazar dungeon, and seemingly freeing him. Upon his defeat, he states, You have broken Zul's hold. I serve that swine no longer. You have freed me from a cruel fate, but Zul is merely a puppet in a larger plan. Even now his master gathers power. Zul will not rest until all the world is in the Blood God's grip. For the sake of Zandalar, and for your kingdoms as well, you must stop him. This begs the question, how does Dazar already know so much about Zul? Could it be that he does not refer to the Blood God by name because he understands this is ultimately the work of one Blood God, Hakkar? At the very least, this statement tells us that Zul's master is gathering power even now, and that the entire world is at risk. We know for a fact that Hakkar is powerful enough to put the whole world in danger. And back when we defeated him in Zul'Gurub's remake in Cataclysm, he did say he'd deal with us another time. It would be logical that he has been gathering strength and has been waiting for the perfect time for his plan to come to fruition. But could the same thing be said for G'huun? Could G'huun really have been gathering power this entire time without us knowing? It's unlikely, to be honest, when the Blood Trolls have only been active recently. How could G'huun have been such a huge threat and gone completely undetected? Which brings us to the final piece which links everything together and firmly places Zul as the prophet of Hakkar. We believe that Zul is working to bring Hakkar into our world by using G'huun as a conduit for rebirth. We know from BlizzCon that G'huun is a blood god, just the same as Hakkar, and from looking at his model, you can see that there's something pulsing within his stomach. Hakkar would stop at nothing to be reborn by any means necessary, and it could be that he's festering and reforming inside G'huun's body. We know for a fact that G'huun is capable of rebirth, because even though Rastakhan and Talanji finally kill Zul in the Zandalar Forever scenario, G'huun is still able to resurrect Zul within Uldir, making him the final raid encounter after G'huun. In the second phase of the Zul Reborn encounter, he's fully awakened and allows the power of G'huun to overcome him. His model then changes from golden-eyed with blue gems to red-eyed with red gems, along with the addition of bright red veins and blood-spattered armor. The abilities used by Zul are called Dark Revelation, Pit of Despair, Pool of Darkness, Shadow Barrage, Blood Shard, and Call of Blood. He also summons Nazmani Blood Troll adds, who use attacks such as Bloody Cleave, Dripping Blood, and Ichor Transfusion. And finally, he summons a bloodthirsty crag which uses the move Hungering Maw. If these attacks aren't already sounding like something Hakkar would do, just wait. For his second phase, he uses abilities such as Wave of Corruption, Rupturing Blood, Death Wish, and, here's the kicker, Corrupted Blood. Inflicts shadow damage every 2 seconds, stacking infinitely until the end of the encounter. If this is not mind-blowing for you, allow me to explain. Back in Vanilla WoW, when Hakkar was first released as a raid encounter, he casted the Corrupted Blood ability. And it had the exact same effect. Thing is, players brought this debuff outside the raid and into cities due to a bug, allowing the Corrupted Blood Plague to bounce infinitely from player to player, causing a worldwide virtual pandemic. If this is your first time hearing about the Corrupted Blood incident, you should definitely go look it up. But all that is to say, this is one of the things Hakkar is most known for in the entire history of the game, and Zul has it, after being empowered by G'huun. Yes, it can be argued that this is just a token ability of all blood gods, but it's such an iconic move of Hakkar's that it's hard to think that Hakkar is not part of this in some capacity. Ultimately, G'huun has been shaped and fed by the Blood Trolls under Zul's guidance, from the depths of the Titan Vault of Uldir. It's a hideous amalgamation of flesh and blood and is a result of the experimentation by the Keepers on both Loa and Old Gods alike. As such, G'huun harbors all kinds of potential in terms of his capabilities. What if these weird Loa Old God experiments are the reason for Hakkar's immense strength and endless hunger in the first place? Hakkar requires massive absorption of blood sacrifices to become physical once again, and to be freed from his realm of banishment. One way that could come about is through the sacrifice of G'huun. He's the exact model of an engorged bloodworm, and we feel that G'huun looks swollen or even pregnant with Hakkar himself. In fact, his model looks incredibly similar to the bloodworms and grubs which could be found all over the original Sunken Temple dungeon back in Classic, which has since been removed. The Uldir raid on Mythic difficulty paves the way to fight Zul as the final boss after defeating G'huun. But this doesn't mean that G'huun's purpose will not first be fulfilled. G'huun clearly resurrected Zul for a very good reason, and it could be that as a prophet of Hakkar, Zul is needed to offer the final sacrificial rites to Hakkar himself. The premise of the final fight against Zul could be to prevent him from becoming a conduit himself for the Loa Hakkar through the absorption of G'huun. It'll definitely be interesting to see if we manage to stop the ritual or if Hakkar is ultimately freed. If Hakkar is in league with Queen Azshara, that would certainly be a force to be reckoned with. Perhaps we'll fight him in the anticipated Nazjatar raid, or perhaps he would be part of a small Trial of the Crusader style raid. Either way, it would be amazing to see Hakkar return for the last time, albeit not at full strength, but it would be amazing to see what he's capable of, and of course to tie up all the loose ends around his story.
So what do you think? Could Zul's interest in G'huun be motivated by a connection to Hakkar? And do you think we'll see the return of Hakkar through Zul's manipulations?
Jeremy Fiesel may be on the record as saying that G'huun is unrelated to Hakkar, but I don't think that discounts Zul himself, seeing as canonically he's already been involved in Hakkari rituals.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe this is all just a hint that the wind serpents are old god-related creatures too, and may have resulted from the same types of experiments. In any case, we hope we've presented all the possible connections between the two blood gods so you can think it over for yourself.
We'd definitely love to know what you think about the whole thing, so be sure to leave a comment if you've made it to the end of the video. And we also have a Discord channel you're welcome to join, where we discuss theories with the community each and every day. Link is in the description. Thanks for watching, Shinies and Luckydos!
Farewell, friends in the Grummels, and may your feet find good trails.